Welcome to the Make Time to Play podcast with me, Georgia Jones, brought to you by the Make Time to Play campaign. Make Time to Play provides parents and carers with hundreds of free play ideas and resources to keep your little ones entertained, whilst talking about the various benefits of play that aids child development. You can download the free Make Time to Play app on iOS and Android for more than 450 play activities, which allows you to filter the activities by your child's age, your play setting, and number of children playing. I had a lovely chat on today's episode with Faith Robin from the National Deaf Children's Society. Faith is deaf herself and spoke to me about how the NDCS support deaf children by removing barriers to help children reach their potential. We also discuss play being inclusive and how it helps deaf children communicate with their peers and how play is their own form of language in the early years. So Faith, obviously you work for the National Deaf Children's Society. That's a mouthful, actually. So what is your role? What do you do within it, and what actually do they do for children in general?
So the National Deaf Children's Society, it's easier to just say NDCS actually, if you want to. They have, their heartbeat really is for children and families. They want to be kind of leading charity that you would go to if you were concerned or had any worries or you need support with your child who is deaf. The National Deaf Children's Society is all about removing barriers for every deaf child. So every deaf child can reach their potential. And I think actually being deaf myself, and you may resonate with this, is that actually the medical model of what might be wrong with my ears doesn't actually get in the way of so many things as the social issues, that if more people understood what they could do to help me, what the tiny things they could do differently, that would make such a massive difference to how I access things. The more people that understand that, the more barriers we can break down for deaf children. That really, it's a lot of the things that they're going to come up against are social difficulties. Their loss of hearing doesn't stop all that kind of excitement and play and wanting to learn and having relationships that are really meaningful and special, just like everybody else. But those social barriers that they come up against can be really kind of stop our progress. And that's what the National Deaf Children's Society is all about, removing barriers for every deaf child. And within that, I manage the Bright Start team, which is all about early years, about early intervention, and really supporting families at that earliest stage when you discover, you have that diagnosis, you find out that your child has got some level of hearing loss. We're really here to support you from that point and to provide activities, resources, a friendly person to talk to kind of guide you through all those emotions that you're feeling as a parent at that very early stage in your journey, really.
I could have done with you when I was little, because I definitely struggled with the learning side, and I do think massively, I mean, me blaming it on my hearing, it could just be that I'm not actually that bright, but I honestly think me not hearing a lot of things in class was a huge part of my learning, because often even the teachers would say to me, because I would put my hand up again and again and again, asking questions because I hadn't heard. And they got to a point where they would get frustrated with me and be like, "Oh, Georgia, we'll explain it to you later." And they never did. And I never got I never got that thing explained to me. And then I'd just go along not knowing and not actually having the confidence to then ask again. Because I'd already asked so many times, and they would get frustrated, which I find with hearing loss, that is something that people who have hearing seem to do quite quickly is get frustrated that you can't hear what they're saying. Now, play is a really important part for deaf children. Why do you think it is so important for the deaf children?
I think play is absolutely crucial in early years development, because play is how we show what we know. It's how children practice things. It's how they demonstrate their skills. Say you've been to the shop and you've bought something, you've been with your family, then you might come home and you practice that piece of learning in your play. And you will unpack it really through a really inclusive and safe and child-centered way. That play is all about you, isn't it? You're at the center. You're really thinking and feeling all of these things that you're learning about, and you're just you're demonstrating those skills and you're building on those skills. And I think you can't underestimate the importance of the early years, because our children's brains are developing at such a rapid rate, from being in the womb, that first 1,001 days. So from being in the womb right up until that child is 2 and beyond. But that time is when I think there's 1 million brain connections a second happening within those first 1,001 days. Yeah, 1 million a second.
Wow.
And that is where all those connections are made. I'm thinking this, somebody said this, I've noticed this, that links to some other part of my learning, and it's all kind of connecting up there. So you can't ever underestimate how powerful those years are. And play is the context really where all learning happens. So if you were to take it away, then there really isn't that language left for the children to use. That is their language really. That's how they communicate what they're doing and how they communicate what they're interested in as well. And as parents, I think it's one of the most significant things you can do to support your child's learning. And this might sound silly, but to really get to know your child, really spend that time prioritizing play and thinking, what is it that my child's interested in? What is it that drives them? What cues are they giving me? How do I know really what? Because we want to follow their interests, because when we are playing, and we're especially repetitive play, it's our brain kind of saying, I like this, I'm mastering this skill, and I want to do this over and over and over again. So when we see that happening, as parents, we're thinking, oh, something exciting's happening here, and we really need to follow their child lead, come alongside them and extend that play and kind of watch it grow, but also add things in to kind of take it onto a new direction really, and help children to move forward. So
and I suppose as well for children and for children that are hard of hearing or completely deaf, I suppose that's one thing where they can really kind of thrive, because it's a doing thing. It doesn't revolve around having to listen or having to stop and lip read or sign. It can actually be physical, and someone can play alongside them and get involved without it having to be them kind of really having to use that part of their brain where they're having to really focus. They can actually enjoy
Yes,
play,
there's lots of different types of play. So like a solitary play where you're really happy, you're in your own world, this is all really exciting for you, and it's your play and you're very focused. And children will dip in and out of that kind of play all the way through their childhood really. But then of course what we're really hoping for children, and what we know we're as humans, we are hardwired for relationships. you can't get away from it. That is how we function, is through relationships, and play is the perfect tool to build relationships because it is naturally inclusive. You can join in somebody else's play, you can work together to kind of create something new collaboratively. All those skills that we're using now as adults stem from our play and how we interact with each other, how we view ourselves as well. And I think that's so important for deaf children, that they really value themselves as they can make a positive contribution, that they are part of something special and that they are special, that as they get older, all those things that we pour into our children, that we want them to have that self-confidence and resilience and self-esteem, a lot of those skills they have to be practiced. I don't think they happen necessarily on their own, but they come through play and through pushing boundaries and testing ideas. And you might use your little small world figures to play out a situation, and that has different endings, and how does so and so feel about that, and thinking about empathy. Play is the vehicle that we use for pretty much everything, but our interaction through play is so crucial for setting the scene, really, for what happens way beyond when we're 3, 4, 5, and how we feel about ourselves.
And is there any type of play, talking about like play kind of teaching children things, is there any type of play that kind of helps a child understand their hearing disabilities?
I think you could probably, I think it's important that we use things in play that reflect deafness, if you like, that it's not something that's just you and only you who's got hearing aids or cochlear implant, or that there are stories and books and toys and figures and represented in the media, all around us. I think that when we include people who are like us, because we all gravitate, don't we, towards people who are similar to us in lots of ways. We click with people that we kind of resonate with, and that can be on a personality basis, but also in terms of our hearing loss as well. And I think children need to be able to see themselves reflected in their friends, in their kind of circles, their environment, and their toys as well. That's not always easy, I don't think, with deaf children. There are resources out there, and on our website, and there are lots of lovely stories that are written by deaf children for deaf children, which are lovely, that really kind of reflect that deafness in stories and things. But I think that is a good place to start.
Yeah, I suppose because deafness isn't always a visible disability, so it's quite a hard one sometimes to show on the telly or in children's cartoons, unless there's a very obvious hearing aid. It's quite hard to show that character is deaf sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's one of those. I suppose it's one of those disabilities that is quite hard to show to children. With sign language, though, is there a way of involving sign language and play?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that it's a bit of an invisible disability, because like you said before about people getting frustrated and annoyed, because it's not obvious, they'll forget that actually you can't hear very well, or because you do such a good job of keeping up, such a good job of filling in the blanks, that actually people forget that they need to just change what they're doing slightly. So yes, it is an invisible thing a lot of the time, which does make it a little bit more challenging. But part of the National Deaf Children's Society's role, which is really important to the charity, is informed choice. So giving parents all the information that they need so that they can go away and make a decision about what's best for their children, best for their family. And that might be to use sign language. It might not be. Every family is different, and sign language kind of isn't used across the board for everybody who has a hearing disability. But I think actually, having worked in early years settings myself with big groups of children, that using sign to support what we're doing is hugely beneficial to all children. But obviously, yes, if we support what we're doing with sign, and really simple sign, so say you're reading a story, if you've got the book and you've also got props, so a visual cue about what's happening in the book, and you've got sign, then you're kind of coming at it from all angles, and you're helping that child to make the connection between what's happening in the book, what that might be, kind of what that might look like. Say it's an elephant sound in the book, then you've got an elephant toy to hold up, and this is an elephant, this is the sound it makes. And then you've also got the sign as well of the elephant to support that. So yes, absolutely, sign can play a massive part in our singing, action songs, storytelling, but also really simple cues that happen throughout the day that you can support with simple, really simple signs. And I think part of the difficulty around sign language is that if you attended a sign language course, it wouldn't really be, it would be about holidays, it would be about food, be about hobbies. And when you're talking to your 3-year-old, you don't necessarily want to talk about where you went on holiday and what transport you used. So
no, it's like learning a language, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you wanted to use a language with children, then you have to really immerse yourself in that language to really fully understand it. And if you're kind of picking up the odd sign here or there and trying to help children to understand it when you don't fully understand it yourself, then it's quite disjointed and can be difficult to do. So using sign to support spoken language is a really lovely way of kind of that gradual introduction. And the National Deaf Children's Society run family sign language courses, which are really specific around the signs that you're going to be using day to day with your children, rather than the kind of broad spectrum of BSL. Yeah. And
is it kind of like age related? Do they kind of go with how old your child is and kind of teach you like the slang that child might be using, or?
Yes, so it will be geared to a certain age group, and families will join with similar age children. So you might learn typical nursery signs, food signs, routine, and then as you get older, kind of signs you'd need in school. And supporting, you know, teachers and practitioners as well, because they are really key when it comes to how comfortable and safe deaf children feel outside of their home. If you take away that kind of communication, actually we feel really unsure. Like you've said exactly, hit the nail on the head, that confidence to really join in. And it's so frustrating because you know that you've got this personality inside of you that's totally capable of being a part of this, but because of this barrier that maybe doesn't need to be there, I can't access what you're doing. It's difficult.
I really noticed that the whole kind of personality of me when I was little, it didn't come out. It was in there. I knew it was in there, but I was this quiet little child because I wasn't heard, basically, and I didn't hear. It was kind of like, you know, a vicious circle, really. And it was only until I started feeling confident enough to say, oh, actually, I can't hear properly, so that's why. It was only until I got a little bit older and I felt confident enough to be like, yeah, I'm deaf in one ear, so what? That I then kind of came into my own and developed that confidence. But, you know, until you realise that it's not something to be ashamed of or upset about or, you know, embarrassed of, it's very difficult to break out of that little unconfident kind of shell.
Yeah.
And it was funny before, you were saying about how you adapt and people almost don't necessarily notice that you've got a disability. I feel like I've adapted massively, and I didn't realise until COVID hit how much I lip read. And I had no idea how much I relied on it. And as soon as everyone started wearing masks, it was almost like I'd lost part of my hearing. I was like, am I going more deaf, or am I just like completely reliant on people's lips?
Yeah.
And clearly I was.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Have you
isn't it?
seen a lot of have there been a lot of kind of parents contact you saying like their children are struggling since mask wearing's become a thing?
It is a really, really difficult thing, and I think there's a big campaign, NDCS, around mask wearing, especially in school and in nursery, because you're right, you take away, if you think about how much body language and lip reading goes on anyway, whether you're hearing or deaf, but when you're deaf, you rely on it so much. To take it away completely makes the most basic and simple of tasks really quite challenging. So, and I think that has a big knock-on effect on confidence to do the most basic things. So I know if I want to go to the shop, I'm thinking, right, what are they likely to ask me? Am I going to pay by card? Do I want a bag? And once I've worked out those things, I can just about work it out. But if they ask me anything outside of that, I'm like, oh, I haven't got a clue. And that really knocks your confidence, and you think, well, I won't ask if they've got any of that or where I might find that, because I know when they answer me, I'm probably not going to be able to work it out anyway. And I think for children, for children who are really relying on body language and on watching their teachers, it's really, really difficult for them. And sometimes you think it's actually so simple. If they just had a clear mask, that would solve so many problems.
I've actually got one.
Have you?
Yeah, they do that. So, I do. I mean, the thing is, I don't really need to wear. It's more I need everyone else to wear it for me rather than me wearing it. But there's a company called Fask, and they sent and they're amazing. Like, such a great idea. It's a shame it's not kind of like just a compulsory thing for everyone's masks to be see-through, so you can see people's mouths. But it's obviously a bit of a barrier for children at the moment. But is there any other, obviously aside from mask wearing, is there any other barriers when children are playing, because they are deaf?
I think there are lots of barriers that don't really need to be there at all. So if you think about just when you're playing or when you're busy and you're little and you're focusing, even when you're not little and you're trying to focus, if a television is on, you go into some like nurseries and they've got music playing constantly. You might be at home playing and the washing machine is on. All of those kind of background noises do create barriers to learning. And so when you're playing, especially if you've decided, right, I've recognised how important this play is, and I'm really going to factor it into our routine at home, and we're going to play at this time, we're going to really focus, then just make sure that you turn off all the background noise while you're deciding to do that. The smallest, simplest thing can make such a difference. And I think other barriers, I think for parents especially, is that independence, isn't it? That you really want your child to be independent, and you want, especially when you're outdoors enjoying play outside, you want your child to be able to go off and explore, but then you know that once they're out of a certain range, they're not going to be able to hear you calling them anymore. Do you feel safe in that situation? And you want children to be able to take risks and to build up their own kind of sense of achievement, that they've done something for themselves, by themselves. So kind of overcoming situations like that and making sure that everyone feels safe and that children understand what it is they need to do in different situations. And even if it's just like a radio aid, you can they link to your hearing aids, the parent can wear it, and when they talk, it kind of Bluetooth that information straight to your child's ears.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So then they can hear you.
That's amazing.
It makes quite a big difference.
I need one of those on my child. And he's not even deaf. I just need him to have that on him at all times. You're like, oh God, mum's calling.
Yeah. Like
that'll make him listen. Oh, yeah. But do you know, it's so interesting when you talk about boundaries for children, actually going into adult life, those boundaries are still there, but because I know with, wonderful, like, the things like what you guys do, it teaches them to then deal with those situations. So the boundaries are still there, but you can deal with them. Like, for instance, when you said about the whole background noise thing, that is one massive thing for me. But all my best friends who I've grown up with, who have known I've been deaf since, we started school together, they all know they have to walk on this side of me. They all know that if we are at a meal, which is always really hard for me because I just can't hear when there's so much background noise. They all know I will have a specific place on the table where I need to sit. And they don't question it. That is what it is. I just have to sit in a certain place. And that's it. It's those boundaries that, you teach the children. They're there, but you can do things to break them down, and you can do things to make them easier.
Yeah. And I think the more grown-ups who understand that child needs that special seat there, and if we just sit round in a horseshoe shape rather than a straight line, then all the children can see each other's faces, and that child will be able to access this. As long as those people are there, because once we're adults, we've got that confidence, hopefully, to say, this isn't working for me. Please, can you just? But when you're little, you just don't always have that confidence or that voice to be heard in that way. So it's really, NDCS is really about building that confidence and self-esteem, because resilience for deaf children is really, really important, because we know that they're going to face barriers, and we know that they're going to have to sometimes overcome them without as much support as we would hope would be there for them. So sometimes you really need to dig deep and think, how am I going to get through this? Or how can I develop the confidence to ask for that? But yeah, absolutely. I think that medical and social model of disability is really apparent when it comes to deafness, because a lot of the time it's a social thing that makes life more difficult. And we know when we're playing... Go on.
No, sorry, carry on, Faith.
When we're playing, a lot of the time, as play develops, so like collaborative play will be something that happens kind of as we get older, where other children are part of the planning of that play. Play can move really, really quite quickly. So what was a fire station can suddenly become a vet. And who was the pilot is suddenly the milkman, because play moves so quickly. And for a deaf child who's not picking up on that incidental learning, they're not picking up on that conversation that's happening behind them, they can very quickly be left out of that play because they can't keep up with the pace of it, because it involves lip reading. Yeah. So your friend Johnny that's just run across to the climbing frame and decided to turn it into, I don't know, Space Mountain, and you're over here, you've missed that. So we really need adults, parents, people working with the children to be a part of that play if we can, so that they can not you don't want someone to say, right, so that climbing frame over there, it was Space Mountain, but now it's turned into the police station. Do you understand? That's not really what we need. What we need is someone to come alongside us and rephrase, recapture what's happening. Isn't it exciting that that's turned into the police station now? I wonder what will happen next. So then that deaf child's like, all right, okay, I know what's happening now. I've got total free access to this now. Thank you so much for just rephrasing that for me. So it's about strategies, I think, and just really simple techniques to really support children while they're playing.
Which is so important. And obviously toys are a big part of kind of play as well as kind of like the role play side of things. And do you think toys can help as well with the learning and development of deaf children?
Toys, sorry.
Toys, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so for very young children, that kind of cause and effect toy is really helpful. So when you press a button, something lights up or a sound is made. Sometimes they can be quite good. But really, a lot of the time, we don't need anything specific or special. Music is a fantastic resource for children when it comes to deafness and play. And you don't need special instruments or toys for that, but just, your pots and pans, wooden spoons, the whisk, because children will really feel vibrations and pitch and frequency, in a really quite meaningful way because we feel all these sounds through our bodies and about tuning into that. So I wouldn't say there's anything specific, any related toys, but just to kind of be open-minded, open-ended resources that don't have a fixed, this means this, and I dress up in this suit to be this person, but just have that kind of open access to using our imaginations, really, for deaf children is really important.
It's interesting because I think, like, one toy that I would have probably gone, oh, that wouldn't work, would be an instrument. Because I would be like, well, they won't be able to hear it. But of course, you forget children that are deaf can totally feel vibrations. And that's a big part of their learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really connect with music and you can feel it. I don't know if you're the same, but with my deafness, I love music. I absolutely love music, but I can't hear lyrics. So I couldn't tell you at all what any of the words are. But I love the tune and the melody and the way it makes me feel.
Yeah.
So, I am deaf, but there are definitely some massive benefits to music about how we feel, and how we connect with music, really. And for early years children, especially, because our ears are on all the time. So they're always hearing, whatever kind of our level of hearing is. Our ears are always hearing, but we're not always listening. Listening is a real skill. So you can know that people are talking behind you, but you don't know what they're saying because you're not tuned in, and not listening. So that's a massive part of learning and play, that skill of tuning in to listen to something. So we might make, you get an Alice band, a headband, and make some massive cardboard listening ears, and you go outside with your listening ears on, and you're kind of really tuning in to what sounds you can hear. So really helping children to think about sound, but we need to make sure that we're not making things too difficult. We need to work out what sounds can our children hear and what kind of music is appropriate, what instruments would be good, and then making all of those things available. So things like stopping when the music stops, running and then stop, or making our bodies really long and tall when the sound is high and squeaky, and making ourselves low to the ground when it's a low sound, and things like that. There's lots of different ways that we can play with music.
Yeah, that's amazing. I bet a lot of people are quite surprised to hear that. What you were saying about you not being able to hear the lyrics, I was quite similar to that for a long time when I was listening on headphones, because I did not realise that I could change my headphones to just come out of one ear. So I was listening to all these songs, and then I met my husband, who's a musician, who was like, why have you got sounds coming out of your right ear, right headphone if you can't hear? And I was like, I did not know that was a thing. I did not know I could change that. Anyway, then he changed it into just one ear, and I was like, oh
oh my God, I can hear like words and different instruments and like lyrics that I didn't realize were in the song. And I was like, this has changed my life.
I didn't know you could do that
I couldn't
either.
believe it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, so that's like definitely something that like, you know, any child that kind of like has less hearing in one ear should absolutely do, because, you know, it's like something, you know, it like opens a new world up to you. However, I do always walk along with both headphones in, purely because I don't ever want anyone to think I'm being rude.
Yeah.
By them talking to me and me just ignoring them and them thinking that I can hear if this headphone's out when actually
oh yes, but you know, that is a difficulty.
Oblivious.
I think, you know, I think that's a difficulty, and my friends that I talk to now, they'll say, "Oh, when I first met you, I thought you were really rude." And
yeah, I get that all the time.
Yeah, or you really stuck up. Like, I'm not at all. I'm none of those things, but
no.
But I just didn't know you were even speaking to me.
Yeah, honestly, the amount of times that actually when I met the McFly like wives and girlfriends for the first time, I made, without realising, the most horrendous first impression, because they'd been on my wrong side and one of them had been talking to me for about 10 minutes and I'd literally just blanked her, just completely ignored everything she said. Obviously I hadn't heard a word she was saying, but it was only afterwards when she found out I was deaf in one ear, and she was like, you know, when I was like talking to you when I first met you, could you hear me? I was like, oh my God, I did not know you were talking to me. She was like, oh, I thought you were so rude. And I was like, oh my God, that kills me. I hate. So now I learned from that. And that was quite later on in life. You know, I was in my 20s at that point. Now, if ever I meet anyone new, no matter whether I've only known them for a minute, I will always say, just so you know, completely deaf in this ear. So if I ignore you, I'm not being rude. I just haven't heard you.
Yeah. You just have to say it, don't you? You get to the point where you think, oh, I better say something because I don't want anyone to think I'm rude to them.
No, I think I've got a bit of a serious face as well when I'm like just not in conversation. So that teamed with seemingly ignoring someone does not go hand in hand.
No, not
but Faith, it's been so lovely talking to you. It's so super interesting. But just before we go, could you just let us know how we find out about more resources? Where do we go?
Okay, so if you go to the National Deaf Children's Society's website, so www.ndcs.org, I think it is. It's so much information on there for you to kind of utilise as a parent, as a practitioner in early years, or across the board really of all children's age ranges. And there is the most fantastic helpline. So, you know, if you want to talk to an audiologist, you want to talk to a teacher of the deaf, you know, you just ring the helpline and somebody will be able to get back to you, you know, because emotions can be very raw, can't they, at that very early kind of finding out. You don't really know what to do or who to go to for support. So the helpline supports so many people through kind of understanding terminology and different types of deafness, audiograms that you'll get as a parent to show your child's hearing loss. So definitely go to the website. In terms of early years and Bright Start, we've got some great things that you can access through Zoom. We've got baby signs, so we're going to be singing and storytelling with signs. You can, that's not available just yet, it'll be coming out on the website really soon. So you can just join that on a Zoom link with your child, with your baby, and just have fun together. And also your community. If you're a parent and you want to talk to other parents, because that's such an important part of all of this, is having that peer-to-peer kind of conversation, then there's part of the website is your community, and it's just a forum. to just talk and discuss things and listen to other people's ideas and solutions, and kind of get support that way. So definitely go to the website, go to the helpline.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Faith. That's absolutely wonderful. And I'm sure that will help a lot of people, you know, of where to go and what to do and how to help their little ones. So thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks, Faith. Bye.
Bye.
I absolutely loved chatting to Faith. It was so interesting to hear all about the ways in which children can engage in play, particularly through musical play, and how they can feel the vibrations with the instruments, which is something I'd never thought about before. The work the National Deaf Children's Society is doing is incredible. And if you would like to learn more information about the NDCS, please visit www.ndcs.org.uk. To access Make Time to Play's toys and play leaflet for young deaf children, please visit www.maketimetoplay.co.uk.